Welcome back to another Clifton Cameras video. Today we are at the Cotswold Wildlife Park with a very special new product from Panasonic. It is the G9. Now, we only just heard about this product last week, so we are very excited to already have it in our hands. Not only do we have a new camera to show you today, but we have a brand new lens to show you, and this thing is a beast. It is a 200mm f2.8 Panasonic Leica Almarit DG lens. It is phenomenal. Just the weight of this thing, it feels substantial. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a tour of the wildlife park, we're gonna go over to the rhino enclosure, and we're gonna explore a little bit more about what this 200mm f2.8 lens is about, and try some of the new features of the G9. So we're at the rhino enclosure, and I've just been playing with the 200mm f2.8, and I love this lens. One thing I do want to mention is that you have to keep in mind that with the G9 we are working with a 4/3 camera, so the 200mm lens is actually a 400mm 35mm equivalent. Now, this lens also comes with, in the package, a 1.4 times converter. Now what that means is, I'm going to put this on in just a moment here and show you some shots of what that looks like of the rhinos. But what that means is I'm going to get an extra 160 mils out of this lens, giving me a grand total of 560 millimeters on this 4/3 camera. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So what we've been doing in the last half hour is we've just been wandering around the zoo, and we've come to the penguin enclosure, and what we've been trying is the high-speed burst shooting. So this camera will shoot 60 frames per second, and it works very well. So you can shoot 60 frames per second AFS, and you can shoot 20 frames per second AFC, and it works very well. We are very pleased. So, big points about this camera that we haven't really touched on yet. It has a 20.3 megapixel sensor, 3.68 million dot EVF, which is crystal clear. I'm a fan. I think it looks great. Looks like you've got several magnification options. You can shoot at 0.83, 0.77, and 0.7, and it shoots blackout free. So you have a bunch of different options with your EVF. You can set it up how you like it. We're at the giant tortoise enclosure with the G9, and what I've been doing is I've been just recording some slow motion video of these giant tortoises as if they weren't slow enough already. What you can do with this camera is you can film 180 FPS in full HD, and it will play back in slow motion in the camera, which is a unique feature because it means that you don't have to upload the footage to some sort of post-editing software afterwards before you can preview what you're filming. So I'm just going over my little fact sheet here, and I have just a couple of points that I wanted to mention that I may not have gotten to over the course of the day. This camera has the world's fastest autofocus system. It will autofocus in 0.04 seconds, so that's pretty darn quick. A couple other things. As we've come to expect from Panasonic, this camera is splash and dust proof. It's a hardy camera. It'll be great for shooting outdoors and in any sort of environment, really. Overall, the menu system's nice. It's clean. You have a joystick on the back. That makes navigating a lot easier. As we all know, the GH5 is geared towards videographers. This camera is for photographers. It's a great camera, but it doesn't mean that you can't use it for video. It will shoot 4K at 60p, and it will also do a 6K photo mode where it uses that video functionality to give you 18 million pixel images, and in that 6K photo mode you can shoot up to 30 frames per second. Very useful. Another comparison to make compared to the GH5, that camera was well known and well regarded for its dynamic range. This camera reportedly has 25% better and wider dynamic range than the GH5, so the images should be incredible, especially in those situations where you have lots of, I suppose, high contrast images. Something I totally forgot to mention today as well is the G9 has it has an LCD display on the top, which is something that we haven't come across in other mirrorless cameras. It's very useful. I think I just got used to seeing it on the DSLR, so I just assumed that it should be there, but it only just occurred to me now that actually this is a unique feature to the G9, and I think a lot of people are going to find that very handy, just being able to look down at your camera and see what settings you have. A feature of the G9 that I'm finding particularly useful while shooting here at the wildlife park is while using the longer lenses, what I can do is using this button right there next to the lens on the camera body, I can magnify what I'm seeing through either the EVF or through live view mode, and that gives me a better idea of how in focus I am. Not only can I magnify it, but using the back button, well, I don't know if it's a back button or a back dial, but using the back dial I can magnify even further, and between that and the focus peaking that you get, you're sure to get a good crisp shot. So we've come to the lion enclosure, and while we're looking at these guys, a really handy feature on Panasonic cameras, if you've used one before, you may or may not be familiar with it, is while you're selecting your focus point, you can actually expand your area of focus using the back dial to make it as large or as small as you would like, and it's a very handy feature for shooting through the glass. It's a lot darker in here. This little portion of the wildlife center is called Little Africa. I guess they've got giant hamsters roaming around Africa. These are called Gundies. And we're just using the Panasonic in here just to see what low light's like, because it is a bit darker. And thus far it performs very well. Keep in mind it's a Micro Four Thirds, so the sensor's not as big. You're not going to be able to take in as much light or as much information. But they've made a lot of use out of that space, and yeah, images are very nice, very clear. We like it. Here's a test of the image stabilization and the low light capabilities. This bush baby here is in not pitch black, but near pitch black with some very odd red lighting. So it should be interesting to see how these pictures come out. Having shoot handheld with those longer exposure times, you can't expect crazy compensation, but it does provide 6.5 stops, so that's a real added bonus when you're shooting with longer focal length lenses. You can shoot handheld, and it's also great for when you need just a little extra leeway on your exposure time so you don't get a little movement blur in the image. So we just come out of Little Africa enclosure, and I was testing the Leica Macro 2.8 45mm lens, and it's cool. Something to keep in mind about the Panasonic camera is that they have the widest selection of Micro Four Thirds lenses. Not only that, all the Micro Four Thirds lenses that you get from Panasonic and Olympus are interchangeable, so you have access to more than just the Panasonic lenses. It's really handy, plus there's a bunch of third-party retailers, so if you decide to go with a 4/3 system, you are not short of lenses at all. There's a world of glass for you to explore. So one of the top features of this camera is the high-res mode, and what that does is it takes multiple images and compiles them into one. You're probably familiar with this option on some other cameras. Some people call it pixel shift. There's a number of different names for it, but the big thing is you get an 80 megapixel option, and you also have a 40 megapixel option, and we're going to show you what that image looks like just now. And the camera will give you the option to set shutter delay as well in different increments, and that just helps reduce any sort of motion or blur. So just a quick note on connectivity. We now have a USB 3 port here, an HDMI port, headphones, mic, and also the remote jack there. And this is USB 3, so you can use that to power the camera and also charge the battery via that port. We've also got these two SD card slots. The battery as well is the same battery that's found in the GH5, so there's some cross compatibility there. We know the GH5 is popular with video users. This camera is geared solely, well, not solely, but is geared towards photographers. So that was our day at the Cotswold Wildlife Park with the Panasonic Lumix G9. Really enjoyed today, great camera, and we also loved the new Leica 200mm f2.8 lens. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more content from Clifton Cameras, hit like and give us a subscribe.